ultimately we're in a customer service business, right? Whether we're doing land development, public works, architecture, environmental, transportation, any of those things, survey, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
We're in a customer service business. That's just the product we're selling. And so one of my favorite lines when a prospective client or someone will ask me, like, why Aplin? Like, why is it different? Why should I hire you instead of someone else? And I honestly genuinely believe this because it's who we are. We are the small firm feel and experience with the resources behind it of a large firm.
Yeah.
Because there are disadvantages to a small firm too, right? They can only do so much at one time, but we don't have that. We have the resources behind it, but that front-facing customer service experience still has that small feel mentality.
Welcome back to the workshop presented by Aplin Martin. On today's episode, I'm joined by President and CEO David Chan and COO Derek Hall. Combining for over 44 years of experience within the firm, these gentlemen have been at the forefront of developing their careers and now leading by example. In this episode, we dive into the current day affairs of Aplin Martin while also highlighting David and Derek's unique journeys to their current roles. We also get into the future of the firm, as well as land development as a whole, and where they see the industry headed. It was awesome to hear David and Derek share their stories within the industry and personal lives, and I hope you all enjoy.
Let's get a little bit of brief background about both of you. Where'd you guys grow up? Where'd you guys go to school?
Want to start?
Yeah, for sure.
So born and raised here in Lower Mainland, British Columbia. Started in the city of Delta when I was young, and then moved to a city called White Rock, South Surrey area when I was in grade 6. So pretty early on. Been there ever since. My wife and I and our 2 kids live there now. I started at Aplin as a summer intern between second and third year of civil engineering school. So that was a little over 18 years ago now. Time flies. And kind of worked my way through being a designer, engineer in training, project engineer, project manager. And then a little over 3 years ago, got the chance to oversee the Surrey Land Development Business Group, so one of our business groups. And then coming up on a year ago, transitioning into this role as the COO, really supporting our business group managers. So it's been fun.
Awesome. Always been in BC, or have you lived anywhere else?
No, always BC.
I thought about it living anywhere else?
No, we've got pretty tight family roots in South Surrey, so especially now with the kids having both sets of grandparents there.
Okay.
It's pretty convenient having
Awesome.
them there.
Yourself, David?
Me? I came here when I was 12 years old from Hong Kong. It was first few years was quite hard to adjust. So went to high school here and then gone to UBC to finish my Bachelor of Applied Science and then do my Master of Engineering and follow that. Along the way, between my bachelor year and my master year, I started with Aplin Martin, and that was 1994. So that's when I first started, went back to do my master, finished my master, and then from that point and onward, I gone through to be a design engineer, a project engineer, IT manager. It's a good 30-year run.
Wow.
And it is very amazing to see how the company grows as well.
Have you gone back to Hong Kong ever since?
I haven't gone back for 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah, after the kids, it's become a lot busier, and pretty much the choice is Disneyland, Hawaii, Hong Kong.
No need to brag, don't worry, it's okay. No, okay.
So no one want to go to Hong Kong.
Yeah. Would you go back in the future? Could you see it?
Probably. I probably will want to go back to see the route. Yeah, but it's like when you ask the family, Dad, I want to go this.
Okay.
It's been a good dad.
Yeah, they gotta run the show for that.
Yeah.
I could take solace of that. So before we get into like how or why or what actually engineering is, how do you describe to other people that don't know what it is?
Well, I will go first. And this one is a very interesting one because my relative always asks me, what do you do? And I'm an engineer. Well, what does engineer do? I said, very simply is, for Aplin Martin, this company, we help people, or we teach people how to play Monopoly with real money. Buy the land, assemble the land, get it rezoned, build houses, build hotel, but now we're doing it with real money. That's how I explained it at the family dinner.
I remember one time we had an engineer years ago, and he said he was at a party, and someone asked that, and what do you really do? And I remember him saying, and he was specifically talking about civil engineering. It's like, well, take me through your morning. What'd you do in the morning? Oh, I got up, I brushed my teeth. Oh, okay, well, you had water because of civil engineering. Oh, your toilet flushed because of civil engineering. Oh, it was raining, your house didn't flood because of civil engineering. So he kind of used that real-time experience of all the things you don't see that we take for granted. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's how I like to describe it as well. It's everything under the ground that you don't actually think about. When you phrase it like that, they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. So No, that's funny that you mentioned it like that as well, because that's kind of my go-to when I describe it to people as well. What do you do? So no, it's funny to hear it from a different perspective. Monopoly one I haven't heard before, but I like the
It's a
real
good
money.
one.
Yeah,
I can throw that one in now. Yeah, like,
you don't have to swipe every time in real life. But okay, now let's get to the how and the why and the reason you both are here today. So why and how did each of you get into the field we are in today? Was it a specific instant, a point in your life where, or was it like a family member that you've always wanted to follow and that has influenced you, or did you like to just build Legos when you were younger? What was that one thing that got you here?
Yeah, for me, my mom was a house designer and kind of a space planning expert when I was growing up, and still is. So I was exposed to the idea of sort of technical drawings and designing at a pretty young age. When I went to school, I think like a lot of people in engineering enjoyed math and science in high school. And so when I went to engineering school, I thought I was going to do structural engineering. And I found that what I liked about civil was there was a lot more of a broadness to it, and there was an opportunity for creativity. I found that even though you were trying to accomplish the same things on every project, the input data was so different project to project. And so I really enjoyed that opportunity to kind of apply some creativity into what's most predominantly known as a technical field. And so as school went on, you had to sort of specialize and pick your electives. I got drawn towards civil, and so that's how I ended up in civil engineering.
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it, is like you're given a different puzzle every day, kind of that you have to try to solve. The goal is to solve the puzzle, but the pieces change every single day.
Totally.
So
Yourself, David?
for me, came here, my language skill was lacking for sure, because by the time I did apply for university, I was only 4 years here. So language-wise was a barrier, and very good at math, very good at science. So really, it led me to do engineering. And also my uncle from Ontario, who has worked for Ontario Hydro One, suggests me, maybe you want to look at that. So started engineering, again, like Derek, I want to be a structural engineer. Partway through, I felt that wasn't really what I want. But my engineering economic has been like the top of the class the whole way. So I know that point is that I have a more business mindset in my head. So I kind of like, okay, let's get out from structure and focus on more general civil. And then after that, pretty much the rest is history.
So would you say it was, again, because the broad range of different tasks?
The broad range of tasks, and also at the time when we graduated, there's not a lot of choice. It's not like I want to go to geotechnical, you got a geotechnical job. When you graduate in the 90s, whatever you get is whatever you dictate your career. That,
Okay.
in a way, I'm very fortunate to end up in Aplin Martin,
Yeah.
and allow me to grow in here.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that, because again, even at Aplin now, we have how many different disciplines just under the umbrella? That
Well, 16 business groups.
Yeah,
And-
but they're business group. But discipline-wise, I would say I just try to count it quickly, about 6, I believe.
Yeah.
6 disciplines. But at that time, we only have 3. We have survey, planning, engineering, or one more, landscape architect, which
Yeah.
is no longer with.
Yeah, so you can just see, again, from the time when you guys first got out to where it is now, how much more broader the company and how much more broader the actual scale
Very
of
much.
land development has become, right? You're not so pigeonholed into one small thing.
No. It's definitely this diversification has really changed in the last 5-7 years.
For sure. So now let's get into those early days. When and how did each of you guys get involved?
Yeah, so when I was in school in the second year of my program, there was a requirement to get an industry sponsor for one of your projects. And so I was in the school library and I grabbed a 1970s engineering directory of local companies, and I kind of half jokingly to the group I was with said, I'm going to just cold call the first company that is in Surrey. Well, Aplin starts with A, and it existed in the 1970s. And so I cold called Aplin Martin. Sure enough, they answered. And the engineering manager at the time was actually someone who had done quite a bit of teaching at the school that I was going to, BCIT. And so they sponsored me. And I got paired up with a fantastic engineer, Mark Cassidy. Still get to work with him to this day. He's awesome. I learned a ton from him. And he sponsored me that summer. I came back for internships the next 2 summers. came back as an EIT after 4th year. Been here ever since.
That's awesome. How nervous were you to make that first call?
I was super nervous. Yeah. Did not think it was
And what
gonna
kind
go
of
well.
phone was it on?
Yeah.
Do you
Good
remember?
question. I don't remember. It was like a or the old, like those slide old BlackBerry.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Good. So I'm a little bit different. I used to work as a summer job with a company that was between 2nd and 3rd year, called Hamilton Associate. The company no longer exists; it got acquired, and it was literally just next building.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I was working there for summer job. I bump into or I work with someone in that office. He really looked up on me saying, David, you got this quality. And he said, I'm going to Aplin Martin to become a senior shareholder in the next 4 months. Why don't you come with me? So at that time, I was at the tail end of my university years. So I said, okay, sure, I will join you. So then I was now introduced into Aplin Martin.
Mhm.
And so then I met with the president at the time for interview, Jorgen, and then subsequently I got hired, and it was a very good fortune, and so I was able to hire and then start. Then at that point I started working for Aplin Martin as a design engineer. Then I finish. I go to master degree as I said earlier.
Yeah, so it sounds like both of you gentlemen had individual people, separate people obviously,
Mhm.
that kind of shaped you and kind of brought you in. Was there something specific that about these gentlemen, like a quality about them that made you want to stick with them? Because obviously as a younger person, there are different options for careers, and there are like, you know what I mean, you're younger, there's so many different
Yep.
things out there, right? Was there a quality about each of these gentlemen so early on that steered you to wanting to stay?
Something that really stood out to me, and Mark was a good example of this, but I think I saw a lot of it as I joined Aplin, initially. There were so many people that had been there for so long. You could tell there wasn't a company that had this continuous turnover. There was a core group of people that had been there for 10, 15, 20, 30 years now. Look at David, his example is another one. And so that really said something to me about the company. Like, it obviously was a company that really tried to put people first and create opportunities for people to grow with the company. And so that was something that really stood out to me.
So for me, the company when I joined was a smaller company. It was a very close. There's such a closeness among all staff members, and I think that's why people want to stay. And it's a small company feel. That is really what attracted me. And these people who bring me on, and that specific individual, was a very entrepreneurial person. He always figured a new way to do business. And so he was actually one of the guys that he brought me into the industry, and he later on also brings some new idea to Aplin as well. But afterward, other things happened and he left.
Yeah, so he had a very innovative way, like a different way of looking
Mhm.
at different things.
Yep.
No, I find that that's unique as well, right? Because in order to move forward, there are different things, and you have to look at business or look at acquiring things in a
Yep.
different way in order to grow, right? So, no, it's super cool that that's the one quality that you found. So now I want to talk about when you guys first met each other way back when. Do you recall what it was, your first impressions? What
I
year?
let Derek
what,
say first.
What
I
year?
get to
What
start.
bar? What restaurant? Where? Like,
I let Derek say that first. I'm not sure.
was it in a cubicle? Was it?
So I started in 2006, and I was an intern, and I remember, I was just super naive, trying to figure out what I'd gotten myself into here with the industry and the company, and you're learning a lot. My first memory of David was in my first week as a summer intern, I got assigned to work on a grading plan by David. So we were doing some site grading for a parking lot. Now I had just graduated, or I was just graduated second year. I was super excited to use AutoCAD and all of these technology, cool tools.
Yeah.
And David goes, no, graded by hand. I was like, graded by hand?
You're like,
It's gonna take so
penciling
much
it.
longer. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty annoyed at the time. I was also pretty immature. And so I did it. I wasn't happy about it, but I did it. And then in hindsight, I realized, I totally get why, because the motivation to learn how to design something correctly when you cannot just change a number on a screen to edit it is much higher. And so it definitely taught me something. But my first impressions were, who's this old engineer to do this old school thing?
Tell me to go backwards and use pen and paper.
So me, this is a very interesting, I can't wait to answer that.
Okay.
And I'm sure he remember that. So Derek entered, very bright guy, and the reason, just go back up his story, that gentleman who hired him highly recommended to the management team at the time about Derek, because he's one of the smartest guy in the BCIT, honor student. So we say, that's good. And he also say one thing, but remember, this guy has some arrogance with him.
Oh, okay.
So
He's got a little ego
we take the
to
good
him.
with the bad. So
He's not.
we take the good with the bad. So then about 2 months in, the secretary, one of the secretary, long-time secretary, come to me. He said, David, this guy really have a chip on his shoulder. You need to teach him a lesson. I said, well, what do you mean? He doesn't listen, and he always make it hard on us, on the secretaries. I said, okay, let me give him some time. Derek, please, I have a cabinet just arrived. Can you build a cabinet for me? Like the bookshelf?
Oh my, not the IKEA bookshelf.
No,
That's
not the
so-
IKEA, but close enough.
Okay, yeah.
That was worse.
That
it was one without the actual
That
instructions.
bookshelf still in the office. Like it's Maggie's
David
office.
removed a couple
I did
screws
such a
and
good
took,
job of building
he
that
took a
thing.
couple screws and a couple pieces out before you started.
And you can ask him how he felt about it afterward.
Everybody who knows me knows that I am the least handy person on the planet. So for me to have to build a bookshelf was
Yeah.
a fate worse than death. But I really tried my best.
And there's a few wrong hole in the back.
Oh, for sure, 100%.
Why is there a hole there? Nail it wrong.
Did you use it? Where did that bookshelf go?
His
I
office.
used it.
Oh, you
I
used it?
used it
Okay.
for 15 years until I moved out the office. And then now Maggie has the bookshelf.
That's funny. Did you name it after Derek at least?
Only 2 people.
I scratched my name.
Only
Yeah,
two
I was gonna say
Right.
there's got to be some signature.
Only 2
or
people.
something.
This was a lesson to say, like, guys,
That's
just
awesome.
calm down. don't push so hard.
That's funny. So now again, look at your relationship. Have you guys always worked close? Like, were you guys always in the same office, coming up together, or how is it?
We didn't really work together a lot
No.
over the years because so David predominantly worked in public sector, so
Okay.
with municipal clients, and I predominantly worked in private sector on the land development side. So yeah, we really didn't get
No.
to work closely together on the technical side, really much at all. Over the
No,
years.
not
But
much.
just-
We don't
just
cross a
different
lot
divisions,
technically.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But only time the reason that we will get together is when the time comes for the transition to happen.
Mm.
I want to make sure the right people on the right bus, and I need to pick my team. Derek come up at the top of my one of my top guys, like 2-3 top guys, and he
Yeah.
is one of the top guys to be on the team, to be on the right seat at the right bus, which is a COO job.
Yeah.
So, and he has that excellent ability and talent at it, so that's why he got the job.
Okay, so it wasn't up until more recently then that you guys
2-3 years
kinda-
ago, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say definitely like 3 years ago we started collaborating more on when you became GM, right? When,
Yep.
when David became
GM,
general
yep.
manager and I took over line dev, we were working together a lot more closely, and I think that's when we started to
Realize each
figure
other's
out-
skill.
Yeah, and started to figure out that this could really work
Yep.
as a partnership.
The strength and weakness, we complement each other quite well.
Yeah.
So at the time then, did you envision that sort of relationship coming about? Or again, like you said, you mentioned it was you were just going through how do you want to build your team sort of thing from like an upper management perspective.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, there were certain things that I saw in him that could do
Yep.
that, and vice versa, I guess. Whoever wants to answer first, but then
Yeah.
vice versa, right?
Well, it's interesting. I think if you go back in time, right? I think David and I see the world very differently. Like we have very different perspectives. We see things differently. Very aligned in where we want the company to go and values. But the way our brains work is very different, and so that's great. When I was younger and more immature, that kind of prohibited me from being able to visualize a really close relationship long term. Plus, that's just not where I was at in my career, so I wasn't thinking about stuff that way, right? But now I love it. Like it's one of the best things, and it helps us really cover each other's blind spots. And I think between us and Maggie Coca as well, on the chief communications officer, we kind of all three do that for each other. And I think that creates the sum of the parts being so much better than we are alone.
What would you say as well, David, for that?
Very same feeling toward that. And Maggie has Maggie Coca add a very key component to our discussion. A lot of time, we see things differently, and Maggie will provide us a different view on that. Hey guys, just this is another space that you haven't looked at, or this is another spot you guys can all both compromise in that. So again, to really manage a company, to properly run a company, you have to have multiple view, because those will cover the blind spots. Those will allow you to expand your visions. And I think right now, Aplin Martin, it is at a size that need multiple visions, multiple perspectives in different decisions. Especially the world is also more complicated and changes at a faster pace.
Yeah. And even just, I guess, in simpler terms, and for my, like, obviously I'm not at the level you guys are at, but from personal experience, just even my friend group has made up of very, very vast different professions, right? So being able to hear from their perspective about what they do and learning from them, being able to take that knowledge and then either applying it to my own personal life or to the work world, right? Is you're always constantly learning from somebody that doesn't, like you said, doesn't think the same way you think is the best way to learn?
You can't. If the moment you have that, you are heading down a dark alley.
Yeah.
It's dangerous, right? And as the company gets bigger, the implications of getting it wrong get bigger, and the upside of getting it right gets bigger too, right?
Yeah.
So it puts the onus on us to put in the work to have that diverse team. It's so critical.
Yeah. So now I want to talk about that increasing in size and evolution. How has that been for both of you, seeing where it came from when you guys first began to where it is now, both personally and professionally up to the new roles you guys are at?
Well, when I first started, the company was only 60 to 70 people big. And we are using pen and paper to do design. And manually, you actually do it manually. And it grow, right? It grow. And to now, we are with multiple different service lines and multiple offices across Canada. The company has grown a lot, as you can see, right? So your question again is?
Oh, how is the evolution? How has that been for you from the start to where you are? How interesting has it been to see the evolution of the company?
It is absolutely amazing to watch the growth of the company itself.
Yeah.
But more importantly is to watch the growth of the people around us.
Yeah.
How we bring in the younger generations and who start growing. Look at someone like Steve Dindo. Look at someone like Kathy Uno. I hired them, and now they're all mature engineers who is capable of doing work but independently and have their own client.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the most exciting part of the career, to see the growth of these people. And yeah, this is absolutely amazing see how the company grow. It's not the financial or the size, it's the people, seeing how they grow.
Being able to bring people along with you
Along
for the
with
journey.
us, yes.
Yeah, I think about Ed Fuji was obviously the president for a long time, and he was on a recent episode, and I think we have a lot of gratitude towards him and sort of the path that he set this company on. And what's interesting is when David started, it was 60 to 70 people, and when I started 12 years later, it was 60 to 70 people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a lot of that growth has happened in an accelerated fashion over the last 15 years, and even more so in the last 5. And so, Ed, we owe a lot of that to Ed. Ed's got a very visionary mindset and growth. It's in his DNA. It's in Aplin's DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And without a doubt, the point of growing is to see the people grow.
Yeah.
And to create space for the people to grow. So for me, that's just the absolute best thing about watching it grow. I think what's wild too is, for both of us, having been in it for so long, you get that bit of gradualism effect. You kind of each year you're like, it grew a bit again. Yeah, it grew a bit again.
You see the percentage at the end of
Yeah,
and
but
it's
then
like,
just take a step back now, and even in this role, I'm starting to look at more like multi-year trend type stuff, right? Just to like understand patterns and see where have we come from, where are we going.
Yeah.
So it's really hitting me harder to be like, wow, like what we've actually changed in the last few years it's incredible, and it's pretty uncommon in the industry. So it's fun to be a part of.
Yeah, not only being able to see your own stock rise, but being able to see everybody else around you stock rise too has got to be pretty fulfilling.
That's what it's about.
So, in order to get to like transitioning that to your positions now, what skills and what tools were you guys able to use that you think were able to make you successful and being able to bring up those people as well?
I think for me, and clearly I had to learn this based on the earlier comments, was that, I think two of the critical qualities are humility and empathy, right? As you get into roles where you are starting to deal more with overseeing people as opposed to just projects, you're going to do a lot of things you haven't done before, right? As you progress in your career, you're going to do things that are uncomfortable. You haven't done them. You better be okay asking for help and asking for questions. But that takes humility to do that. And it can get harder as you get into positions where you're supposed to be perceived as the one with all the answers.
Yeah.
Guess what? Nobody has all the
Yeah.
answers.
You're the genie at the end of the bottle, but
Yeah, exactly, right? But that's not a reality, right? Everybody needs help. And so having humility to do that, I think, is critical. And then I think, we talk a lot about being a people-first company, but that requires the quality of empathy, right? Being able to put yourself in people's shoes. And, we'll defend the culture of this place staunchly, right? The culture here is so critical to us. It's so important. And, for me, that's it. Being a place where people are, they feel safe. They're free to express themselves, learn, make mistakes, grow from those mistakes, learn some more, do it again.
Yeah.
And so that's so important. But again, having empathy allows, for me now to reflect back on when I was more junior and when I was learning and the mistakes I made, and I still make lots of them, right? So I think those are just critical qualities as the company grows.
yeah, self-awareness, I think, too, being able to know what you lack or what something I need to know to work on, right? Because if you think you're the best, you're most definitely not.
For sure.
Right? Knowing what you can improve on, right? And being aware of where you should improve is super important.
From my view, I have looked at is the network. From when you started, or you should as any young engineer, is to grow the network that will allow you to have, when you need question to ask, you need problem to be solved. Not only you can rely on the internal experiences, your network can allow you to go external as well. When I was a project engineer, I call upon the contractors on how something can be built. Now I call upon the subcontractor, the senior guys, how do they run the business? How do they navigate the business challenges? So those are what the network can help you. It's not only internal, but external will give you a lot of answer and feedback you are looking for. So to me, that's one skill that brings me to this where I am today. The other skill that where I am finding today is now learn how to work with imperfection. You want someone to do something for you, they will come up with a different result. Slightly different, not totally different, but there is a deviance of 20% sometimes, and it can never get to the perfection the way you want it.
He's talking about me. I'm not perfect.
I mean, in general,
He's like this one over here.
in general, you need to figure out a way how to work with the imperfection or the difference what you expected.
Yeah.
To me, that is, you could call it empathy, but it's just how life is in the real world.
Yeah.
You never get 100%. It's out of your control.
I think what's interesting about that too is, people are often asked, well, how do you take these jumps forward? And one of the buzzwords is delegation. And I think when I was first trying to learn how to delegate, I didn't have the skill of delegation at the level I needed to yet. And I thought the delegation was primarily getting things off my plate. But what I realized in time was that good delegation is actually empowering people to take ownership of something, take ownership of an objective, and then support them and help them to achieve that objective their way, right? To execute their vision. It's a subtle but important mindset shift for someone to be executing your vision or for you to support them executing their vision.
Yeah.
And that to me was a hugely critical skill. As I got better and better at that, and I'm still working on getting better at that. But as I got better at that, it allowed the people around me to sort of accelerate. And as they accelerated, it kind of pushed me out in a good way and allowed them to take over a lot of things that I was doing at the time and allowed me to take on new challenges too.
Yeah, you almost want to play to other, not a sports analogy, but you want to play to people's strengths, right? Every person has their own individual thing that they're super good at, right? So they might not be comfortable doing it, but they're good at it. And do they want to do it, right? So it's finding people's niches and what they can excel in is the super important thing.
But then now something to add to that is this is a very interesting topic is when you are delegating people to do technical design, technical work, there's always a right answer. The grading plan, you always grade it with certain way is the right answer. But if you move away from technical work, executing of business plans, executing of business strategies, in those cases, what you communicate, even your vision very clearly, the other people will receive it slightly differently. And the other person will perform or do the work slightly differently.
Yeah.
And therefore, there will be a deviation between what you want to see and what they will produce. You may want a red color. It will still be a red, but his red may be slightly burgundy red. So you have to be accept what is that and work with that slight differences or imperfection.
Yeah.
People who can't jump through that hoop will never be able to truly delegate.
Being able to adapt.
Not adapt, but it's also accept the differences of the result. It's never 100%.
Interesting. David, you mentioned before as well that relationships was one of the skills that helps excel people in their career and helps people move forward. Mm-hmm. How did you go about building your network when you were younger, and how did you realize that this is something that you could use to your own career success?
I was fortunate, and I have to say I was fortunate. When I tried to build my network, I went to Ed, I said, Ed, I want to build my network. And he said, David, to build your network in today's industry is very hard for you because you don't drink, you can't go out and party. So my network is always good drinking buddies. So tell you what, I will find you a technical committee that you would fit well in. And at that time, so happened there was a client of ours. He was too busy doing his client work and he wasn't putting enough time to this committee called MMCD. And Ed introduced me to him through his network, and from that, I started working for this committee. And from there, I built a lot of my network from there, either with supplier, contractor, and then with the municipalities. So I really, during my 15, 20-year tenure of this community, with this association, I have got all my contacts in the industry in Lower Mainland and in BC. So that was one of the saving grace. I was able to work for some of these type of association. And I encourage all our younger people to participate. You never know what will come out of it. And this is some like either be UDI, EGBC, or Alberta Association, Ontario Chamber of Commerce, that kind of thing. Definitely try to get involved.
That's interesting because I think there's a stigma around networking events or networking where you have to go out and you have to have bottles of wine, or you have same thing that they give you the drink tickets, and there's always the stigma behind that. But that's a different avenue that you took,
It's
where
technical.
exactly join a committee or join a different club where you never know who you're actually going to meet.
That's right.
Yourself, Derek, for networking?
Yeah, I think that's a great aspect. I think another one, one of my favorite things to tell up and coming team members is early in your career, what you know and how fast you can advance what you know, it will definitely play a role in how fast your career advances. Earlier than you think, who you know starts to take a front seat. And one of the ways for me that I think really helped build a network was even when you're junior, you're going to be in the trenches on projects trying to solve problems with people, right? You might be solving problems with contractors, you might be solving problems with a client, a PM, or someone at the municipality who might be at the time, just as junior as you are. Looking for ways to get other people wins. It kind of creates shared experiences. You think about your relationships, in your friend group. Well, a lot of what friendships are based on is shared experiences.
Yeah.
And so no better way to get good shared experiences professionally than to find ways to get other people wins. And if you do that, they're going to look for ways to get you wins as well. And that give and take, that ebb and flow, not trying to win every interaction, but trying to actually build having each other's backs. And as I look back now, I have this network of people that as my career progressed, their careers progressed, and they're now in relatively senior positions in other parts of the industry. But we have that history, that 10, 15, 20 years of experiences to draw on and reminisce about, and trust, right? You build trust over that time period. You kind of see how each other operate. The reality is how I operate as a COO isn't actually any different than how I operated as a junior designer.
Yeah.
It's just a different sandbox, but it's the same qualities, right? So,
Yeah, and staying true to yourself, like you said, over the time, like different tasks may change, but the way you're going to be going about them, like there's certain things that you learn, but the person still behind them is still Derek Hall.
Totally. Yeah. So I think I wish I had known that more when I was younger, that like how important it was going to be. I think it worked out, but I think knowing consciously that when you're what might seem like a simple thing, when you're just trying to solve a project problem, answer a comment from a municipality, get something done, but really every one of those interactions is those little building blocks that all add up to your reputation, and ultimately that's huge.
Yeah, and I think that that's something to learn as people try to go higher and higher, is that there are smaller things. Don't think of it, I gotta place 100 things in a box at the same time. Just do one or two, start small, and then at the end of the day, you will have those 100. So now, building on all of those networks that you have and all of those contacts and such like that, how do you keep growing without, you guys mentioned before, that important phrase, small firm feel, as you guys keep going, like you said, all the contacts you guys have had, all the networking, the growth within Aplin as well. How do you keep maintaining that, or keep doing that while maintaining that small firm feel?
Well, first off, I think it's important to acknowledge that it's hard, and not a lot of firms do it, right? Like as you grow, it's not easy to maintain that small firm feel. It's something that's a really important area of passion for me personally. I think that, as David alluded to, it's one of the bread and butter elements of Aplin. Feeling like you belong to something that's more than just work, and then bringing that feeling to our clients. And so I've done a lot of research on looking at companies that have grown a lot and ones that have lost their identity, ones that haven't, and you learn that from the way the employees talk about their experience working there, right? Yeah. And so there are a couple companies that I've found that have been able to do it. They've gotten very big, but they've maintained sort of that culture. One is Les Schwab, a tire company in the States, and one is Fastenal, like a steel fastener company. So all over the place in terms of what they do, but that's not what's important. But two of the things that they've done that I'm definitely trying to emulate in terms of how we grow Aplin on the operations side is, one, they've restricted the size of any one individual business unit. So instead of having gigantic business units, which have a different culture and different feel to them, creating more business units. So for us, that might be based on geography, that might be based on service type, but just creating more units instead of big ones. The other is how they actually put leaders into place. So you see these companies, the vast majority, if not all, of their leaders of those business units are promoted from within. They're people that in many cases have come all the way through from doing the most junior level designs, work their way through. They understand how the company works inside and out.
Yeah.
And the comment that the leaders of those companies have made was it was much easier to teach those people business than to teach business people who we are. as a company,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like common sense, but in reality, you look at most companies, most of those hires at those positions, a lot of times they're external.
Yeah.
And so those are sort of two key things that I think we're trying to emulate and use those tactics that have worked in the past. Learning from history is obviously so important if you want to not repeat the mistakes of history, and trying to do that at Aplin.
So that's so true, right? Because if you look at our internal statistic, the people home group generally rise to the top, like Derek and myself and a few others. We try to bring in people who is like 7 or 10 years in the industry to join us. Some of them don't last too long, maybe 3-4 years, they jump around, they left, or they never make it to this partner position. So it's definitely a challenge. Like, the few of them do make it, but you can see external transplant is not always work. So at least for Aplin, we can say that is where the strength is to build within and let them become the leader of the company. My vision of the future company, the small firm field, is this. Over the last 30 years, we have been relying a lot more on technology. And engineering industry is also morphing into more a technology-based company. Similar to how taxi morph into Uber nowadays. So I see that happening, but with the more technology we base on, people's collaboration become more important. Like how we collaborate with people, how we work with people. And being able to have a smaller office business unit will allow that to foster better. And this is so important if you want to keep that small business culture or small office culture and make the closeness among people. And that culture we have to maintain, and we have to continue grow that culture. Is the closeness among staff, so that it make me feel like a small firm. I have a slogan that I always said. It's like, a lot of people heard about HSBC. The slogan is that we are the world's small bank. The way I see it is that our ethos is we are Canada's small land development firm. We need to have that feeling for our clients, so that they don't need to call 15 calls to get to the senior owner or to file a complaint or compliment. They can get to the owner or at least someone with the ability to make a decision in maybe 2 phone calls. So this is how, from a client perspective, it also will be beneficial.
Yeah, being reachable and being able to actually
Agile,
maintain.
reachable.
Exactly.
I think where that manifests and why that's so important is ultimately we're in a customer service business, right? Whether we're doing land development, public works, architecture, environmental, transportation, any of those things, survey, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
We're in a customer service business. That's just the product we're selling. And so one of my favorite lines when a prospective client or someone will ask me, like, why Aplin? Like, why is it different? Why should I hire you instead of someone else? And I honestly genuinely believe this because it's who we are. We are the small firm feel and experience with the resources behind it of a large firm.
Yeah.
Because there are disadvantages to a small firm too, right? They can only do so much at one time, but we don't have that. We have the resources behind it, but that front-facing customer service experience still has that small feel mentality, and that's huge. When what David's talking about, you can get a hold of someone who can make a decision, get you what you need in a timely fashion. That's the fundamental way to do it.
This has actually happened about 5 years ago when I was GM. One of the branch managers, one of the staff is about to leave. He was panicking, saying they got a big offer. I tried to match it. I don't know who to call. He called me general manager at that time, and he said, David, this is what happened. I need to get back to the person, otherwise she will leave. I said, okay, so what does she want? She wants this. I said, give it to her. And then he said, that's it? I said, yeah, that's it. What else do you want?
Signed, sealed, yeah.
I said, what do you want? He said, wow, no, at my previous company, I need to go through 4 layers of signatures before I can get an answer. It will be at least 1 week. And you
Yeah.
give me 5 minutes, I say, yeah, that's all. So this is agility that we can provide. And we want to continue to provide that agility
Yeah.
to empower our manager to make a recommendation, and we trust it, we go for it.
Yeah.
Right? And if it needs to be talked about, we talk about 1 phone call, 2 phone call max. So this is where our small company feel come into play.
Yeah. Like I think you mentioned before, being able to empower the individuals and having that trust because you've seen it grow from where they came from to where they are now, basically.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge.
Awesome. So, not to get a little bit, I guess, darker or sadder now on that same topic while being able to grow, but obviously putting in a lot of hours and there were a lot of sacrifices you guys have had to make in order to get to where you guys are and to get to where Aplin is today. Can you guys speak a little bit about those sacrifices, whether it was in your career, work-life balance, that sort of thing, that you guys have had to cope with and adapt in order to grow yourself career-wise, to grow the company career-wise as well?
Oh, I will start on this one. Yeah, sure. So, so first of all, at younger years when I joined Aplin, as if you guys pay attention, I was an IT manager. So at Aplin at that time was 60 people. We don't have an IT guy. And I almost volunteer or I will need to be because there's no one manager because I'm good at computer at that time. So I took over the role as a IT manager or managing the IT. They don't have IT manager role at the time, but managing the IT stuff. So some of the staff came to me and said, David, why are you doing this for free? I mean, it's not in our job description. I said, look, man, the company needs it, I will do it. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was during that 2-3 years I was doing this IT work, I was given the responsibility also start preparing the budget, looking after the budget of that group. Even though it's not big, but I have input. I was able to see the financial statements. I was able to talk to my manager about how to purchase and how to lease plans. It exposed me to some management stuff. So that is a silver lining of giving some sacrifices. Nowadays, I travel a lot, and yeah, definitely sacrifice family time, but it also allowed me to see other people and allow other people to know me better at different regions, at different offices. So that is a personal time sacrifice, but then what I gain back is able to interact with some of my staff, who is our staff, who is in Toronto, who is in Ottawa. So this is actually a very rewarding feeling as well.
You're about to have a lot of IT resumes coming in after that story.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, were you supposed to be looking at those
Yeah,
financial statements?
I was able to at the time.
Don't answer that. Yeah, I'm gonna take a slightly different approach here. I think something I was thinking about, as you asked that question, things that were sacrifices, and I think one of the sort of maybe less spoken about ones was sacrificing comfort. From the perspective of, I found kind of throughout my career, when I do a specific role for kind of in that about 3 years, I feel like I start to get pretty comfortable in it in terms of getting like mastery. Not complacent, but like comfortable that I have a good handle on how to do that role well. And to be clear, I'm not complaining about this, but as you every time I got into that position, it was like the next day I was doing something different.
Yeah.
And so there was a sacrifice to, the question was to kind of get to this point, right? And so there was a sacrifice of comfort because I was kind of perpetually in this feeling of perpetually in this feeling of discomfort where I've got to learn new things and I maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome and I'm trying to do it well. Yeah. And you've got to be gathering information from a lot of places to try and do it well. So I think that was a sacrifice kind of early on and through the journey. I think more recently, again, as you get into roles where you're supporting people as your primary obligation, the need to be responsive in a timely fashion goes through the roof. Because if someone comes to you and they get what they need, then they're going to feel confident and trust to come back to you again. And you need that to be effective. If they don't, they sometimes won't go somewhere else. Sometimes they just won't ask the question.
Yeah.
And that's really dangerous. And in fact, it actually prevents you from being able to even do your job because you can't read their minds. You don't always know what they need for support. And if they're not comfortable to approach you and ask you, then you're not going to be able to do your job. And so, obviously being able to be responsive, it does come with a sacrifice of, availability and obviously there's a time element to that too. So I think for me, having a very, very good supportive wife and very patient with me when I've got to do those things. And, she's also an incredible resource for, bouncing ideas off of because she's a way better judge of human character than I am. And so having that resource, but her understanding that, there are sacrifices, but that she's, willing to do that as a partnership, I think is like critical to where I am for sure.
And like I think you mentioned before, we are in a customer service based industry, right? So how many times have you been online and it says you're 18th in queue and your wait time is 47 minutes, and it's like, all I want to do is make sure my tickets are available. Why am I doing all this, right? So when that email is in your inbox and it takes you 3.5 seconds to answer it, even though you might be off the clock, it doesn't hurt to just go ahead and do it sometimes.
Yeah.
So now I want to look ahead to the future and your visions for it. So not only about the company, but about individual success, and about not yours personally, but for other people that are currently underneath you. What do you envision success looking like for an individual at Aplin Martin?
As in so the way that I see it is, I see Aplin Martin success is from a business perspective, from an organization perspective, is to have a solid presence in the Ontario market and also expand into the maritime in due time. Right, with basically where we see is that we want to put our office where opportunities are. So that's how I've envisioned Aplin Martin success is. It's like I said, we are the Canada's land development firm. So on the other hand, is personal success. Is I look at personal success as able to see other people to have the success I have through my career. Pass it forward, right? Aplin gave me a lot of opportunity, gave me a lot of stability in my career, in my life. I want that same able to pass on to the next generation or the engineer who joined us, who still have another 30 years in their careers. I want that to be passed on to them. That's how I see my personal success in the next 10 years when I'm the 10 year of this company.
Yeah, I think someone was answering the question one time, why grow? Why keep growing? Company's good, stable, why not just leave it the way it is? Yeah. And they answered, I'm going to quote them, they answered with two key reasons, and I thought they were really powerful. One was so that the people who are up and coming in the company can have the space to grow with the company. Right? So if you have a lot of high quality people, they need space to grow. Otherwise, you're going to lose some of them. We don't want to.
Yeah.
So they can grow with the company. The second was, if we genuinely believe that what we're doing is creating a culture and an opportunity for people to have, stable lives, happy families, to do fulfilling work, if we can do that to influence a few hundred families, well, why not do that to influence a few hundred more? Now, the person who said that was David Chan.
David's like, who's that smart guy that said that one time?
And it was in our last corporate town hall a few months ago. Yeah. And it's not rhetoric. Like, I see him live it day in, day out. I see the way he handles himself, the way he operates. It is like genuinely from the heart for him. Mm-hmm. And that's inspiring. It's inspiring for me, and it's something that I definitely try to emulate. I think we talked about, growth being in the DNA of Aplin. So while we want to grow reasonably, when I think about success for the company and success for people in it, it's just tackling new opportunities, right? Whether that's in new markets, like David's alluding to, new service lines, some crazy thing we've never even thought about yet, starting a podcast, doing things that are maybe outside the norm for a company that has our history. I think that just creates endless opportunities for the people within it to grow with it. And then that's going to result in what David mentioned, getting to see those people have 10, 20, 30-year careers here. One of my favorite lines when we're in the hiring process, someone will ask me a question like, I want to start like 1 week later. Is that okay? And they're worried it's going to cost them the job offer. Yeah. I said, look, we don't deal in weeks here. We deal in decades. Yeah. Like, I'm going to enjoy being at your retirement party. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you start a week later. Yeah. So having that sort of big picture mindset, I think, sets people up for success, and that's huge for us.
That's super awesome to hear, even just like, because then it sets somebody to have at the back of their head that, okay, they are going to have my back and they are thinking about me for that long, right? So
you have to have someone's back, and this is why how this company has such a long staff retention. Like, it is so important. Like, I truly said it from my heart, is we have the employees back, and whether you have a family emergency, you have a health issue, we will catch you, mm-hmm. Just pick you up. Right? This is a family. Yeah. This is where the small firm feel still exists. Right? Yeah. Not a lot of firms have that, and we will maintain that until the end of the day.
Yeah, being able to count on people outside of your immediate friends and family group, right? So now you guys mentioned decades and decades and decades before. I want you to think back now and tell me a little bit about some of the projects that you guys have worked on. What was your, either the one you were most proud of, the funniest one you've ever worked on, or your favorite? Which one, I guess, brings the most when I say project to you? You think of that one that you worked on.
Yeah, for me, it's a project called the Southlands in South Delta, or an area called Tsawwassen in BC. So it just an incredible experience working with Century Group was our client, incredible client partner, and this was a huge area of land close to the U.S. border in a kind of an agricultural area, and so they had a vision for it, and I was actually brought into the team pretty early on in the visioning stage of the project, so back in 2012, which was unique. Usually when we come onto a project, the vision's more or less there, and we're brought in to sort of execute the vision. So it was interesting to actually get to be part of the sort of project team at the table early days when they were visioning it out, which was fun to get to watch and a little bit be a part of. And so, but that project was so unique because we had to bring in like over 1 million cubic meters of fills. It was a huge filling program. We were basically raising land up above the ocean, protecting it from ocean, flooding,
Yeah.
and a lot of unique infrastructure, things that were sustainable, doing things like combining detention to improve drainage while also reusing water for irrigation. So in combination, they were taking these huge areas of land that weren't irrigable, so they were marked agriculture, but you couldn't farm them effectively, and massively increasing the utility of their actual farming production. So that was really cool. And then in addition, we were building about 1,000 units as well, and it's been going for the last over 10 years. We recently got final sign off on some of the early
Finally?
pieces.
I was gonna say, I feel like I've seen those. I've seen those in the Ontario office. I've been touched on that project.
Yeah, absolutely. And now to go through there and see all the people that are living there, there's a restaurant, there's a pub, there's grocery store, there's all these incredible things and all these people living there. And I remember one of the interesting things about that project was it was the first project that I had ever worked on where they actually rendered the whole thing in virtual reality. And so we could go into a VR studio in the architect's office. We'd go in, we'd put on the set, and we would actually be able to walk through the development like long before a shovel had ever hit the ground. And so it was partly a tool to sort of visualize things. It was helpful for like members of the public, council. But we actually used it as a design tool too. We could be in there and actually that grading doesn't look like it works. It's not clicking there. That building's too high. It doesn't work. So it actually ended up being a design asset as well. But that was really cool to be able to kind of actually walk around the development. So that one for me sticks out for sure. When I think project, that's my baby.
So for me, it's a bit about a job, but less technical, but more personal, humbling job. So 6 months after I finished my PhD, I got my stamp. I start trying to run the job now that's more independently on the contract administration job. I thought I know a lot about engineering now. I got my stamp, I'm good. Start building that job, start the construction of it. It ran into so much trouble, and there's also a contractor engineer who is very seasoned, and he basically picked out all my mistakes and how I wasn't doing it right, how I wasn't administrating the contract right. It basically give me a mirror to look at myself. Do you think really you know, or you think that's what you know?
Mm-hmm.
So after that, it was a humbling experience saying, wow, I didn't know a lot, even I have a stamp. So then after that project, I make up my mind, I decided I will make sure I will tone my design skill and I will tone my contract administration skill to be able to grow in the future, to able to carry my name or carry the company's name. 10 years later, before this contractor passed away, that was one of his last jobs, I worked with him again. And he said, David, you improve a lot. And I really respect your every decision you make in this job.
Yeah.
That feeling was so good. And it was so humbling that, hey, someone finally recognized my improvement. So to me, that is the job that I will say is my most interesting job. And it did allow me to look at myself.
Yeah.
Look at myself. Yeah.
Now looking into more, because not every job, like you said, is going to be so fulfilling or so, so prosperous at the end. What is one that you look back on, or a proposal or something that was the biggest loss that you have looked at, or a project you look back on and it was like, wow, there were a lot of things that, hey, might have been a loss, I learned from it. How did you get over that?
Yeah, so for the 30 or so people who heard my first town hall ever after starting to manage Surrey Land Dev. They'll have heard this story before. But when I first got my PNG, I was working on a project with a developer, at the time, very small developer, and a very small project. I think it was like 12 or 16 townhomes, something like that. And I missed something on the water calcs. Straight up missed it, didn't follow the bylaw properly. We submit the drawings, city comes back, oh, you missed this, you got update this. Well, to update that meant we triggered a hugely costly additional water main upgrade that would have bankrupted the project. And I didn't know what to do. And I was like trying to solve it myself, right? I was trying to rely on myself, solve on it. I wasn't going to others for help. And it was interesting because at the time, and again, just that early days, you just don't have that maturity yet. My brain was kind of spiraling. I was not in a good mental place. My wife can attest. I was, not really sleeping much, not eating much, just kind of going to work, trying to work, but always trying to solve the problem. And I was watching One Tree Hill, which is a show every night just to like numb my brain. So for those of you who know,
brain rot in the background.
Just trying to tune the brain out.
Yeah.
And so after a couple of weeks, I couldn't solve it. And so finally, I worked up the courage to go to my manager at the time and just lay it out. Right, I just said, hey, here's the situation. Here's where I'm at. I don't know what to do. I don't know if there's a solution. And I'll always remember, so the loss at the time was, at that point in time was, I think I was losing my sanity. But I remember in that moment, he had a choice for how to respond. And he just chose to support me. Now, he was a shareholder. There was financial implications. There were maybe implications to his own personal bank account as a result of that mistake I had made. But in that moment, it wasn't a negative reaction and apology later. It was immediate, right away, first response to support me. And then as it turned out, we talked through things. He didn't have a solution either. And then but it freed my brain up, and I got creative, and I thought of an out-of-the-box solution, and we ended up writing a letter to the municipality just explaining the situation, and we ended up getting exception. Nothing was unsafe, and it worked. But that wasn't the point, right?
Yeah.
That's not what stuck with me. What stuck with me was always how he chose to react. So the lesson that I learned, and it's really something I've held close to my heart ever since, is you only get one chance for how you respond to things when you first find out about them. And so now, whenever I see someone come into my office and they've got that same look in their eyes that I did back then, I flash back and go, okay, just remember, like whatever it is, we're going to deal with it as a team, and making sure that they feel comfortable, calm, and supported first.
Yeah.
And sometimes that frees their brain up to come up with creative solutions too, right? But that was that was a rough 2 weeks there.
I was gonna say, if you have to turn to One Tree Hill,
hard binge watching.
Let me give you another one. That one's okay. So it was a project in one of the municipalities. It's a roadwork project. I got the news on a very sunny Thursday morning. One of the guy installing street lights, two of the guys installing street lights got electrocuted under my design. It was not my design, but under our set of construction tender. And I was shocked to hear that. And I immediately, the contractor informed me, immediately I asked for what happened. They say, well, when they pick up the light post, they accidentally touched the wire. And the two guys operating the pole, trying to installing it, got electrocuted. One got electrocuted really bad. The other one is severe hurt. So I was like, at that moment, oh, shit, right?
Yeah.
So, and then panicking. And then I remember that afternoon, I still need to go play golf with clients. And Ed was at the tournament with me. And I run to Ed, I say, Ed, this happened. And Ed's reaction was very calm. David, I heard it already this morning. Don't panic. We will deal with it tomorrow when we're at the office. I was like all spinning in my head. But again, that same calmness allowed me to just calm down a bit, not as running crazy as you know, your stamp is on the thing, right? You don't know what happened. Mm-hmm. So then that night when I drove home after the golf tournament, I didn't even stay for dinner. I just drove home after the golf. And I thought, my God, my kid was young. My kid was 4 or 5 years old. Someone's dad is not coming home. And I literally, tear come on my eye when I was driving home at that point. Next morning, go back, talk to Ed. We look at the drawing, and then we talk to the WCB, like the WorkSafe people that afternoon. It all worked out. It is not our issue. Like, it's nothing to do with the design. It's more when the people operate, they didn't pay attention. It's nothing that is really us. But I do still learn that when we go out to do design, check the overhead wires before you sign the design and make sure. But the point is not here. The point again is first, make sure people are safe. Secondly is when stuff happen, your staff, be calm. If you are being very anxious, your staff ain't getting any better.
Yeah.
You have to calm that down. And at that time, Ed calmed me down at a golf tournament. Even though I still shot over 100, it's not the point.
That was going to happen anyway.
That's gonna happen. Thanks, Derek. So, but it is the calmness I receive at that moment. And this is why, going back to what we said earlier, Aplin is here to support our staff. In many firms, if some of the manager will already give you the banging the table, beep, beep, beep type of thing already.
Yeah.
But Ed never did. Ed was very calm. And I mimic that afterward. Like when people make mistakes, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
One way or another, we will figure it out.
It's composure and being able to show. I think that's a huge leadership quality, is being able to show that you're composed in that under any stressful circumstances. Because if you show that you're not in control
You
of the
are not in
situation
control.
and that you
You
don't
are not in
have
control.
level-headedness, how are other people supposed to be able behind you?
Exactly.
Supposed to be able to follow.
So
somebody
that kind of,
that's-
the two stories that are very aligned.
I think it reinforces team too, right? Like we talk about teamwork a lot, but the reality is teamwork is not just a bunch of peers on a team. It's like up and down the organization too, right? So it's not that if someone comes to us, it's a, oh, what did you do?
Yeah.
It's a, how can we solve this together? And that's just the immediate instant reaction because it's literally who the people are that are attracted to work at this company.
For sure.
So I think it has an impact.
People do make mistakes. And
Yeah,
as long
of
as
course.
genuine mistake and you don't repeat the mistake, then we learn from it, right?
Exactly. Not everybody's a robot. So.
No.
I'd like to end off with this one. As you guys have said, sitting down with President and COO, very grateful for that. What is a piece of advice that has been told to you by somebody that you look up to, either a role model, a parent, a public figure, or something like that, or even a quote from a book? What is a piece of advice or a quote that you have been told that you either A, live by, or that you would like to pass on to somebody underneath you, whether it's something you each tell your kids at night or somebody you tell some of your mentees here at work or younger staff that you would like to pass on to them?
This is gonna sound so cliche, but it's honestly the truth, is just ask questions. I think so often when we start out, I think about my kids. Like they ask questions ad nauseum, right? Nonstop. But guess what? They're learning a lot quickly too, right? And so I remember when I started, like people told me, we want you to ask questions. I didn't believe them. You're not being a nuisance. I didn't believe them. I don't want to bother them, right? So I figured it out myself. But the reality is they mean it. Those people mean it. And I wish I could go back and tell myself, just ask the questions, because the reality is the more questions you ask, the faster you learn, the faster you gain proficiency, the more useful you are to your coaches too, right? So it is a win-win when you ask questions and they're able to help you. I think, one of the little like life hacks with asking questions and finding that balance so you don't feel like you're a burden on people is stacking them, right? So learning that skill of stacking questions. Don't just get stuck on one thing and stop working and wait for the answer. Put that in have a Word document beside you, write the question down, pivot, go to the next thing you can do, so you run out of things. Then go to them, maybe it's every 4 hours, once a day, whatever. That can be a really effective way to, make asking questions efficient. But don't ever stop asking questions.
For me, I would say I live by that. It's active listening. Listen more, speak less. Because by listening, you understand what the other party want, what their feeling is, and when you speak with, you don't need to speak a lot, but with accuracy. And that is where a lot of times people miss. You can blab on a lot of things, but be concise and one thing. But active listening, just listen and understand what the other party is looking for, is quite crucial. And because you can then allow you to answer the question right. So that's the word I will give to some of the younger engineers. Listen more. Like there's so much good advice floating around if you're willing to listen and focus listening to it before.
That's awesome. Well, that's all we got for today. Thanks again to Derek and David for joining us on today's episode and sharing all your knowledge and your stories. Really appreciate it, guys, and I know our listeners will as well. And stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you.